Most people don't realize it, but there comes a quiet moment in life when something inside you says, "This isn't working anymore." Not loudly, not dramatically, just a calm, uncomfortable truth. You can feel it when you wake up without excitement, when your effort no longer matches your potential, when you know you're capable of more, but can't quite explain why you're still here. That moment is not failure. It is awareness. Rebuilding yourself does not begin after everything falls apart. It begins the instant you stop pretending everything is fine. It begins when you understand that your current results are not a life sentence, but a reflection of who you have been becoming. And if results are reflections, then change is possible. The most powerful thing about being human is this: no matter where you are not finished. Your past does not own you. Your habits are not permanent. Your limitations are not final. You are allowed to change your direction without asking permission, and you are allowed to rebuild without explaining your reasons. Tonight, this is not about motivation. This is about decision. A decision to stop living on autopilot and start living intentionally. Because the greatest transformation does not happen when life changes. It happens when you decide to change yourself. Personal rebuilding begins with taking full responsibility for where you are and where you're going, because responsibility is the doorway to real power. The moment you stop pointing outward and start looking inward, your life changes direction. Many people want improvement without ownership. They want better results while still blaming circumstances, people, the economy, their upbringing, or bad luck. As long as responsibility is avoided, progress is delayed. Responsibility does not mean you caused everything that happened to you. It means you decide what happens next. That distinction is crucial because it moves you from being a victim of events to becoming a designer of outcomes. When you accept responsibility, excuses lose their grip. Excuses feel comforting because they protect the ego, but they quietly steal your future. Saying, "This is just how things are," may sound realistic, but it freezes growth. Responsibility says, "This may be how things are, but it's not how they have to stay." That mindset alone separates people who rebuild themselves from people who repeat the same year over and over with different dates on the calendar. Responsibility also forces honesty. You cannot rebuild anything without first seeing it clearly. If your health is poor, your finances unstable, your relationships strained, or your confidence weak, responsibility asks you to acknowledge your role without judgment or self-punishment. This kind of honesty is not harsh. It is liberating. When you stop lying to yourself, you stop wasting energy defending a version of yourself that no longer works. Clarity creates momentum, because once you know the truth, you know where to begin. Taking responsibility shifts your focus from control over others to control over yourself. You may not control the weather, the market, or other people's decisions, but you always control your response, your habits, your attitude, and your effort. Rebuilding yourself depends on mastering these controllables. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, learning over ignorance, action over delay, you reinforce the belief that your life is shaped from the inside out. Responsibility also changes how you view failure. Instead of seeing failure as proof that you are incapable, you begin to see it as feedback. If something didn't work, responsibility asks what needs to be adjusted rather than who needs to be blamed. This creates resilience. People who rebuild themselves are not immune to setbacks. They are simply unwilling to be defeated by them. They learn, refine, and move forward stronger because they own both the mistake and the lesson. Another powerful effect of responsibility is confidence. Confidence does not come from positive thinking alone. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. Each responsible action, no matter how small, builds self-trust. When you wake up earlier, finish what you start, improve a skill, or make a hard but necessary decision, you quietly tell yourself that you can be relied upon. Over time, that trust becomes unshakable confidence, the kind that does not depend on approval or external validation. Responsibility also eliminates waiting. Many people delay rebuilding their lives because they are waiting for motivation, inspiration, or the right time. Responsibility understands that action often comes before motivation. You act because it is necessary, not because you feel ready. In doing so, readiness develops. Life rewards those who move forward, despite uncertainty, not those who wait for perfect conditions that never arrive. When you take responsibility for where you are going, your future becomes intentional rather than accidental. Goals stop being wishes and start becoming plans. You begin to ask better questions. What skills must I develop? What habits must I change? What standards must I raise? Responsibility turns vague hope into specific direction. It forces you to recognize that your future is not something you stumble into, but something you construct through daily choices. Rebuilding yourself always begins here, because without responsibility, change is cosmetic and temporary. With responsibility, even small improvements become permanent foundations. The moment you fully accept that your life is your responsibility, you stop negotiating with mediocrity and start demanding growth from yourself. Knowing that whatever you consistently choose today is quietly shaping the person you are becoming tomorrow. Change doesn't start with circumstances, it starts with decisions, because circumstances are often the excuse we hide behind when we don't want to confront our own choices. People wait for life to improve before they decide to improve themselves. But life works in the opposite direction. The outside rarely changes first. The internal decision always comes before the external shift. Until a decision is made, nothing truly moves forward. There is only intention, hesitation, and delay dressed up as planning. A decision is more than a preference or a wish. It is a line drawn in the mind that says, "This is who I am becoming, regardless of what surrounds me." Many people confuse hoping with deciding. Hope says things might get better. Decision says things will get better, because I will act differently. Circumstances respond to this difference with time, but they never respond to indecision. As long as the mind is undecided, effort is inconsistent, discipline is weak, and progress is accidental. When people say they are waiting for the right circumstances, what they are often waiting for is comfort. They want certainty, approval, or reassurance before committing. But real change requires moving without guarantees. Decisions that reshape lives are rarely made when everything feels safe. They are made when discomfort becomes more painful than staying the same. At that point, the decision becomes non-negotiable, and action follows naturally. Decisions redefine identity. The moment you decide to take your growth seriously, your behavior begins to align with that identity. You start making choices that match who you have decided to be, not who you used to be. This is why lasting change feels difficult at first. It requires acting out of alignment with old habits and familiar patterns. But repetition strengthens identity, and soon the new behavior feels natural rather than forced. Circumstances often try to argue with decisions. Old environments, routines, and relationships resist change because they are comfortable with the version of you that existed before the decision. This is where many people retreat. They interpret resistance as a sign that the decision was wrong, when in reality it is proof that the decision is working. Growth always disrupts comfort before it creates progress. Decisions also simplify life. Indecision drains energy because it keeps the mind in constant negotiation. Once a clear decision is made, mental clutter reduces. You no longer debate whether to act. You simply act because the decision has already been made. Discipline becomes easier when the question of, "Should I?" has been permanently answered. This clarity creates momentum, and momentum makes consistency possible. Another important truth is that decisions must be renewed daily. One strong decision can change direction, but daily decisions sustain the path. Rebuilding yourself is not about one dramatic moment. It is about repeatedly choosing growth over convenience. Each day presents opportunities to either reinforce the decision or slowly weaken it through compromise. Consistency is not about intensity. It is about loyalty to the decision you made about who you are becoming. Decisions also shift how you interpret setbacks. When change is rooted in circumstances, setbacks feel like stop signs. When change is rooted in decision, setbacks become detours. You may adjust the method, pace, or strategy. But the direction remains unchanged. This prevents temporary failure from turning into permanent retreat. The decision anchors you when motivation fluctuates. Most people underestimate the power of a single, clear decision because the results are not immediate. They forget that decisions plant seeds before they produce outcomes. The environment may look the same for a while, but internally, alignment has already begun. Skills are being developed, habits are being formed, and perspective is shifting. Eventually, circumstances catch up with the decision, not because of luck, but because consistent action makes change unavoidable. Rebuilding yourself requires understanding that waiting for circumstances to change is surrendering your power. Deciding to change is reclaiming it. The moment you decide, you stop being shaped by what happens to you and start shaping what happens next, not through force or urgency, but through steady, deliberate choices that quietly transform the direction of your life over time. Small daily disciplines compound into massive personal transformation because life rarely changes in a single dramatic moment. It changes through quiet, repeated actions that shape character over time. People often search for breakthrough experiences while ignoring the power of consistency. They underestimate small efforts because the immediate results seem insignificant. But what feels insignificant in the moment becomes extraordinary when repeated over months and years. The direction of your life is determined less by what you do occasionally and more by what you do repeatedly. Daily disciplines work because they align effort with time. One small positive action may not appear to matter, but time magnifies its effect. Reading a few pages each day seems minor until months later. You realize your thinking has expanded. Saving a small amount consistently may feel slow until it grows into stability and confidence. Choosing patience over reaction may not feel heroic, but over time it reshapes relationships and emotional control. The compound effect is invisible at first, which is why many abandon good habits too early. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but it is actually a form of self-respect. It is the decision to do what is beneficial rather than what is easy. Small disciplines do not demand heroic willpower. They require commitment to simple, repeatable actions. When the actions are small enough, resistance decreases. This is important because transformation fails when expectations are unrealistic. Sustainable change depends on behaviors that can be repeated even on difficult days. Small disciplines also build identity. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of growth. Over time, these repeated actions shape how you see yourself. You no longer say you are trying to improve. You see yourself as someone who improves. Identity-driven change is powerful because behavior naturally follows self-image. Once the identity shifts, consistency becomes easier and relapse becomes less likely. The compound effect also works negatively, which makes daily disciplines even more important. Small acts of neglect accumulate just as powerfully as small acts of discipline. Skipping responsibility today seems harmless until it becomes a pattern. Avoiding discomfort today feels relieving until it creates stagnation. Every day you are either investing in growth or accumulating future regret. There is no neutral ground, only direction. Small daily disciplines train patience, which is essential for rebuilding yourself. Modern culture encourages quick results and instant gratification, but personal growth operates on a longer timeline. Discipline teaches you to trust the process even when progress is not visible. This trust prevents emotional decision making, where people quit simply because results are delayed. When you understand compounding, you no longer need immediate proof. You rely on consistency. Another powerful aspect of daily discipline is that it reduces reliance on motivation. Motivation is unpredictable and influenced by mood, energy, and circumstance. Discipline, when small and habitual, removes the need to feel inspired. You act because it is part of your routine, not because you feel like it. This creates stability, especially during challenging periods when motivation naturally declines. Small disciplines also create momentum. One positive action often leads to another. When you start the day with a constructive habit, you are more likely to make better choices throughout the day. This momentum builds confidence and reduces internal resistance. Over time, what once required effort becomes automatic, freeing mental energy for higher level growth. Transformation through small disciplines is not dramatic, but it is dependable. It does not rely on talent, luck, or extraordinary circumstances. It relies on choice repeated daily. This makes personal growth accessible to anyone willing to be consistent. The simplicity of the process is what makes it powerful. Yet that same simplicity causes many to overlook it. Rebuilding yourself through small daily disciplines means trusting that what you do today matters, even when it feels insignificant. It means choosing progress over perfection and consistency over intensity. When practiced long enough, these small actions quietly reshape your habits, your mindset, and your results, until one day you realize that the person you have become is no longer limited by the life you once lived. Letting go of the past, without losing the lessons it taught you, is essential to rebuilding yourself, because the past has the power to either become a foundation or a burden. Many people stay trapped not because of what happened, but because of how tightly they hold on to it. Regret, resentment, guilt, and nostalgia can quietly anchor a person to a version of life that no longer exists. Growth requires releasing emotional weight while preserving wisdom. And that balance determines whether your past strengthens you or limits you. Holding on to the past often feels justified. Painful experiences demand acknowledgement, and successes create a desire to relive what once worked. But when reflection turns into fixation, progress stalls. Rebuilding yourself does not require erasing memory. It requires changing relationship with memory. The goal is not to forget what happened, but to stop allowing it to define your identity, decisions, and expectations. The moment the past becomes your reference point, instead of your teacher, it begins to control your future. The past teaches through contrast. It shows what worked and what didn't, what aligned with your values, and what violated them. When you extract these lessons honestly, the emotional charge begins to fade. Pain loses its grip when it is converted into understanding. Mistakes become guidance rather than evidence of failure. This process demands maturity because it requires self-reflection without self-condemnation. Beating yourself up keeps you tied to the past, just as much as denial does. Letting go also involves forgiving both others and yourself. Unforgiveness is one of the most draining emotional states because it constantly pulls energy backward. Forgiveness does not excuse behavior or rewrite history. It simply releases your need to carry the weight of it. When you forgive yourself, you stop replaying old decisions as proof that you are flawed beyond repair. You recognize that growth requires trial, error, and adjustment. Without self-forgiveness, rebuilding becomes impossible because every step forward is undermined by internal sabotage. Another challenge in releasing the past is attachment to old identities. People often cling to who they used to be because it feels familiar, even if it no longer serves them. Change threatens comfort, and the past offers a sense of certainty. But rebuilding yourself requires allowing identity to evolve. You are not required to remain loyal to outdated versions of yourself. Growth means updating beliefs, behaviors, and standards based on who you are becoming, not who you were. Letting go of past success can be just as important as letting go of past failure. Past victories can create complacency or unrealistic expectations. When people rely on what once worked without adapting, they resist growth. The lesson from success is not to repeat the same approach forever, but to understand the principles behind it and apply them in new ways. Progress requires humility, even in success. Learning from the past also means recognizing patterns. When similar outcomes repeat, they reveal habits and mindsets that need adjustment. The lesson is not in the event itself, but in the behavior that led to it. Once the pattern is identified, you gain power to change it. This transforms the past from a source of pain into a source of clarity. Letting go does not mean rushing healing. Suppressed emotions resurface later in destructive ways. Releasing the past requires allowing yourself to feel, reflect, and process, but not to dwell indefinitely. There is a difference between healing and living in the wound. Healing moves you forward. Dwelling keeps you stuck. The measure of release is not the absence of memory, but the absence of emotional control that memory holds over you. Rebuilding yourself demands that you carry lessons lightly and leave emotional baggage behind. When you do, the past stops whispering limitations and starts offering insight. You move forward not as someone haunted by what was, but as someone informed by it, stronger, wiser, and free to create a future that is no longer constrained by yesterday. Growth requires patience, consistency, and a long-term vision, because meaningful change unfolds on a timeline that rarely matches human urgency. Many people abandon personal development not because it doesn't work, but because it doesn't work fast enough for their expectations. They begin with enthusiasm, expect immediate improvement, and when results are delayed, doubt replaces commitment. True growth demands the ability to remain devoted during periods when effort appears to produce little visible reward. Patience is the ability to trust the process without needing constant proof. In personal growth, progress often happens beneath the surface, before it becomes visible. Skills develop quietly, habits strengthen gradually, and mindset shifts subtly. Just as roots grow before a tree appears tall, internal change precedes external results. Without patience, people disrupt their own progress by changing direction too often, mistaking slow growth for failure. Consistency gives patience its power. Occasional effort produces occasional results, but consistent effort produces transformation. Consistency is not about perfection. It is about returning to the path repeatedly, even after missteps. It is the discipline to show up on ordinary days, not just when motivation is high. When consistency is present, growth becomes predictable rather than accidental. Small actions, repeated regularly, create stability, and stability creates momentum. Long-term vision provides direction when patience and consistency are tested. Without a clear vision of where you are going, it becomes difficult to endure short-term discomfort. Vision answers the question of why effort matters. It connects today's discipline to tomorrow's outcome. When people lack vision, they measure progress only by immediate results, which leads to frustration. With vision, they measure progress by alignment with the future they are building. A long-term vision also prevents emotional decision-making. Short-term thinking reacts to temporary feelings, circumstances, and setbacks. Long-term thinking evaluates actions based on whether they move you closer to the person you want to become. This shift in perspective changes how challenges are interpreted. Difficult periods stop feeling like interruptions and start feeling like part of the process. Vision reframes struggle as investment rather than punishment. Patience does not mean passivity. It does not mean waiting without action. It means taking consistent action without demanding instant payoff. Many confuse patience with inactivity, but real patience is active endurance. It is the willingness to keep improving habits, refining skills, and correcting mistakes while trusting that results will arrive with time. This mindset protects against burnout and discouragement. Consistency strengthens identity over time. When actions align with long-term vision repeatedly, behavior becomes part of who you are rather than something you try to do. At this point, growth becomes sustainable. You no longer rely on discipline alone. You rely on identity. The work feels less like effort and more like expression. This is where long-term change becomes permanent. Growth also requires patience with yourself. Self-improvement is often interrupted by self-criticism. People expect instant mastery and judge themselves harshly when progress is slow. This creates emotional resistance and reduces consistency. Patience allows room for learning, adjustment, and recovery. It acknowledges that setbacks are part of growth, not evidence against it. When patience is present, mistakes become lessons instead of reasons to quit. Long-term vision encourages delayed gratification, a skill essential for rebuilding yourself. Choosing what benefits you later over what pleases you now requires mental strength. Vision strengthens that strength by making future rewards feel real and meaningful. When you can clearly see the life you are working toward, short-term sacrifices feel purposeful rather than restrictive. Rebuilding yourself is not a sprint, and it is not a series of quick fixes. It is a gradual construction project shaped by steady effort and guided by clear direction. Patience keeps you calm, consistency keeps you moving, and long-term vision keeps you focused, allowing growth to unfold naturally over time, without the pressure of urgency or the distraction of impatience. You must become more before life can give you more, because life responds not to wishes or needs, but to capacity and value. Many people focus on changing their results without changing themselves, hoping for better income, stronger relationships, deeper confidence, or greater opportunity while remaining the same person with the same habits, skills, and mindset. This creates frustration because external rewards are always limited by internal development. Life cannot sustainably give you what you are not prepared to handle. Becoming more begins with understanding that personal growth is the real leverage point. When you increase your knowledge, skills, discipline, and emotional maturity, you naturally expand what you can attract and manage. Success without growth creates pressure, but success with growth creates stability. This is why sudden gains often disappear when they are not supported by personal development. What you receive must match what you have become, or it will eventually overwhelm you. Life operates on alignment. Opportunities tend to appear when ability meets readiness. A person who has not developed patience struggles with leadership. A person who has not developed discipline struggles with freedom. A person who has not developed character struggles with responsibility. Becoming more is about closing these gaps before life exposes them. When inner growth precedes outer reward, progress feels natural rather than stressful. Many people misunderstand this principle and believe they must wait for life to change before they can change themselves. They want confidence before taking action, clarity before committing, and success before developing habits. In reality, confidence grows through action, clarity through engagement, and success through preparation. Personal development moves first. Circumstances follow. When you focus on becoming more, you shift from chasing outcomes to building capacity. Becoming more also reshapes standards. As you grow, what you tolerate decreases, and what you expect increases. You begin to demand more from your time, your effort, and your environment. This internal shift often creates external changes because behavior naturally adjusts to match higher standards. You no longer need external pressure to improve. Internal expectation becomes the driving force. Growth also changes perspective. Problems that once felt overwhelming become manageable as skills and emotional strength increase. This does not mean problems disappear. It means you outgrow them. Life does not necessarily get easier, but you become more capable. This is a crucial distinction because it removes the illusion that happiness depends on the absence of difficulty. Fulfillment comes from competence, not comfort. Becoming more requires deliberate effort in areas that are often neglected. Mental growth through learning sharpens decision making. Emotional growth through self-awareness strengthens relationships. Physical growth through discipline increases energy and resilience. Character growth through integrity builds trust. These areas compound together. Neglecting one limits the others. Life rewards balance because balanced growth creates stability. Another aspect of becoming more is learning to serve at a higher level. Value is often measured by the problems you can solve and the impact you can create. As you grow, your ability to contribute expands. This attracts opportunities not because you demand them, but because your presence adds something meaningful. When you become more useful, life gives you more responsibility, more influence, and more reward. Becoming more also protects you from entitlement. When growth is prioritized, gratitude replaces expectation. You understand that progress is earned, not owed. This mindset creates humility, which keeps learning active and ego in check. Humility allows continuous growth, while entitlement halts it. Life responds generously to those who continue to improve, without assuming they deserve more, simply for wanting it. Rebuilding yourself through becoming more is a lifelong process, not a destination. Each level of growth reveals new areas for development. This is not discouraging. It is empowering. It means there is always room to expand, refine, and strengthen who you are. As you become more capable, disciplined, aware, and valuable, life naturally responds by offering more opportunities, deeper fulfillment, and greater responsibility, all aligned with the person you have chosen to become. As we come to the end, remember this: rebuilding yourself is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming who you were always capable of being. It begins with responsibility, is powered by decisions, and is sustained by small daily disciplines. It requires the courage to release the past without losing its lessons, the patience to grow over time, and the commitment to become more, so that life can give you more. Every step forward, no matter how small, matters. Progress is not measured by speed, but by direction, and the fact that you are willing to rebuild already places you ahead of where you once were. Your life is not shaped by a single moment, but by the choices you make repeatedly. If you choose growth consistently, change becomes inevitable. You do not need to see the entire path. Just take the next right step. Trust the process, trust your effort, and most importantly, trust yourself. The work you do today is quietly creating the future you will one day stand in with pride. Good luck on your journey of rebuilding and becoming. May you stay disciplined when motivation fades, patient when progress feels slow, and committed to the person you are choosing to become. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to grow.